Hey everyone, this is Scott from certmedia.com, and in this video, we're going to be reviewing Avada. We're going to be talking about whether you should use this theme, what are the benefits of this theme, and what are some of the downsides that you're going to need to be aware of. I've set it up on a staging site, and I just imported a demo that I honestly just thought looked really good. And we're going to be talking about what you're going to be deciding on when you're trying to look at this theme. Avada is a really powerful theme. It compares up with the likes of Divi. I wouldn't really say Genesis because it's more of a framework, but it's definitely an all-in-one theme. It's like the newspaper theme, but for business websites. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. You get a lot of flexibility though. You get a live builder, which I'll show you here in just a little bit. You get tons of options that make it easy to where even if you're not a developer, you can kind of get a website built and set to your style. It works great with WooCommerce out of the box. It works with BBPress out of the box pretty well. It does not work very well with BuddyPress. But if you're looking for this style of theme, you're not really worried about those types of things. One thing I'm going to say, though, right off the bat, is in its current state that I'm reviewing at 6.2.3, you're not going to be getting any 90s on PageSpeed Insights. That doesn't mean that the theme is slow, though. You can have a fast website that is powered by Avada, and I have numerous videos on this channel that cover how to optimize your website, even one specifically for Avada that you can use with free plugins. But this is a website and a theme that just has a lot of code and a lot of flexibility, and you pay for that on slower mobile devices. So I want you to keep this in mind. It's not so much a deterrent to be worried about because Avada is really strong and they have great developers who are very active. And I think that they'll resolve the issues with their performance notably, but it's something to keep in mind. It's not the fastest theme, but you trade it for what I would think is probably the easiest experience for anybody to just design their own website. You're probably watching this because you're not a developer. You're somebody who's got a small business or thinking of starting one, and you want to know, can I use this to build my website? And the answer is yes. Surprisingly, yes. This is really easy to use, and their theme support forum and Facebook group are really active in answering questions. I'm in the Facebook group, gone through the support forum. Devs are great at answering, great documentation, and there's been covered by tons of YouTube channels for basic things, even like mine. So this is a great option for you. If you're trying to build a website, you don't have the money to pay for a developer, and you just want to get a good looking site. You could control most of your options through the Avada panel. So when you first install Avada, you get this nice little welcome screen. It's going to ask you to put in some codes, that way you get your updates. It shows you how to do that. They even walk you through it. And then you get tons of demos. Demos are where Avada shines because the demos are actually really nice looking. I'm just going to pick one this is the Avada interior design demo. I'm going to pick just one of these at random, mostly because I want to show you what they can look like. Let's do this videographer one. I don't even know what this one looks like. Okay, looks really good. Even though the images were still loading in, I'm gonna blame Comcast for that, just because I don't like Comcast. But this looks like a professional website. If you were somebody who's starting a videography business, you could copy this demo. You could modify it, change the accent color from the orange to the yellow, blue, green, whatever your business colors are. You could change the content, and you could have a fully functional website that you built by yourself. And that's where Avada shines. This looks really good. You have an about page, which is very important. All of the quintessential pages for your business are pretty much pre-built. You just swap out the images and the text for what fits your specific business, and anything you don't need, you can delete. And the demos really give you that jump start. For instance, even if you're not an interior design website, let's just say you are selling clothing. You could easily pivot this type of design to sell clothes by swapping out the images and the text using the Fusion Live Builder. Speaking of which, I think we should look at some of the plugins that Avada Built integrates with and includes. So large themes like this tend to include a bunch of premium plugins to increase their value to potential buyers. And Avada is, without a doubt, pretty generous with what it includes and what it says it supports. So you get the Fusion Core, which is just their standard plugins. Fusion Core does their plugin stuff. Fusion Builder is what actually allows you to build your website on the front end. Fusion White Label and Branding allows you to rename the Avada settings so that way it feels like it's your own theme as opposed to being Avada. Now, any seasoned developer can easily tell that it's Avada, but for you, it's mostly just meant to white label it, and so that way it looks like it's made by you and not the Avada devs. The Convert Plus is a premium plugin that is pop-ups, allows you to easily design them and deploy them. Advanced Custom Fields Pro is definitely a developer-friendly tool. You're probably not going to be using this if you're considering using Avada for your implementation. The Layer Slider WP is a premium slider plugin. It's just like Slider Revolution. They're both premium sliders. What I will say is I personally don't recommend using them. Sliders tend to go away in modern web design just because nobody tends to click. After your first slide, your conversion ratio basically just takes a nosedive. And conversion ratio is just, let's say you have a button on there on your first screen that says that goes to your contact page, and your second slide goes to a blog post that you've written. Pretty much nobody's going to ever click on that second slide. Nobody. It's completely pointless. Nobody's going to click it. And that's why sliders are just not well used. And you don't need to use these plugins with Avada. It just bundles them in case you want to use them. The PWA plugin, Avada has access to set up a progressive web app in the settings. And this just integrates the plugin that the WordPress core developers are working on. WooCommerce, even if you don't want to have an e-commerce store, it integrates with it. And if you disable it or you never enabled it in the first place, that's totally fine. The events calendar is a calendar that you can set up on your website to show events. So if you're hosting an event or you're trying to get people to sign up and have some meeting with you, you can do that. Yoast SEO, my preferred SEO plugin. It integrates and works well with HubSpot. This is a marketing tool. This one is really more just for them to promote HubSpot. Almost all plugins will work with the HubSpot. All themes will work with the HubSpot theme plugin out of the box. Contact Form 7 will work and has styling for. And bbPress, it does work with, as I mentioned. Just because a plugin doesn't appear in this list as well doesn't mean it doesn't support it. There are tons of plugins that Avada will work with that are not listed here, and that's totally normal. These are just ones that it has special integrations with, and that's been tested with. The system status screen, if you get here, is just a simple screen that's meant to help you get diagnostic information. Basically, if you're having an issue, the theme devs will ask you to copy and paste this info to get the system report, and the support will look over it and say, you should try fixing this, this, and that, or you should be aware that this is a potential issue to help you resolve any issue you're having with the theme. The theme options now, this is where you get into a lot of it. If you haven't grabbed a cup of coffee yet, you should probably do so now. We're going to go through these options because there's quite a few of them. And these are the options that exist outside of the Fusion Builder. These are what control the general bones of the website. The Fusion Builder is how you, if these are the bones of the website, the Fusion Builder is where it's like the skin or the makeup. It's what you design to actually make your pages look the way it does. These are going to be the core bones of the website though. So the layout, you could choose boxed or wide. A box layout is where the content fits in a box and there's typically just white space around it. Most websites, I would just say use wide. Wide design is definitely in for 2020. But if you have a very specific design you're trying to go for, this is what a wide design looks like. I'll show you what happens when you set it to boxed, even though it's going to hurt me just to see it go all boxed like. There you go. It shrinks it and adds a background. Just use wide if you can. Wide is just so much better to look at. The site width, though, is the overall site width. So it goes to 1270 pixels, and this is basically the max width that the container will support. This is an ideal size for desktop users. This is not going to affect mobile users in any way. But typically after that screen size, you're going to start getting scaling issues, particularly because a lot of laptops don't support that wide of a display. Even if a laptop has a resolution of 4K, it may just physically not support content that wide, especially on a smaller, like a 13-inch display. So 1270, totally fine. Content padding is just the amount of padding at the top and the bottom of the post. This is typically just extra white space between here, which is the content area, and the footer area, which begins here. 100% width padding will control the left and the right padding for when you're using the full width or wide width setting. So it's just extra padding on these sides here that helps press the content in a little bit more. So it kind of gives it the feeling of being boxed without it actually being boxed. This is typically in ideal units. They use an example of 30 pixels. This is where you should be. The single sidebar layout allows you to modify the width of the sidebar in a percentage unit. So this is just how wide your sidebar is. So if you open up like a blog post, this is just going to be how big of an area the sidebar will take up on any given page that a sidebar exists on. With Avada, you can not only create not only can you customize the sidebar as you would with any theme, you could choose to enable it or disable it. And you can choose how wide or how thin the sidebar is. You can even have two sidebars right next to each other, and it won't matter too much. The responsive design, you can choose to enable it or disable it. You shouldn't really need to modify these settings too much. Most of them in here are developer options, or they're mostly diagnostic options as well, if you're having particular scaling issues on mobile devices. But really, the defaults are totally fine. Whatever, if you used a demo and they imported it, this is probably going to be fine. You should never turn off the responsive design. The color options allow you to get a little bit of flexibility. So obviously, because we imported the interior design demo, it uses a lot of earthy tones, and these are the color palette that it imported. And you could choose your primary color, which is going to basically be obviously the main color used for like your text or your stars. And don't mind those share buttons, they come from a plugin. Or just really anything that is what people are going to be reading. And then you could choose a predefined skin, so it has a light skin and a dark skin. If you're designing it from scratch, this matters more to you. You can then also choose a predefined color scheme. If you're trying to start from scratch and you don't know what to choose, you could just select it here. Finally, you could then just choose to import button to import a custom color scheme. Really though, you can't go wrong with any of the demos. They just make the color scheme selection a lot easier. And then you would just modify anything that you need to in these sub options. So you can modify your header position. You can modify the way your header looks. You could change it from any of these options. A lot of them are kind of old school, but if it's the design that you're trying to go for, you do get 6 header options. You can then choose also if you're having a slider on any given page, you could choose to have the slider above or below the header. So sometimes people like having a full width slider that takes over the whole screen, the vertical height of the screen. And then when they scroll down, the header comes into view and then it treats it like it's some kind of landing page. It's a good substitute if you're trying to copy a design that has a entrance page. So it's a page and it has you click here and it enters the website. It's a good way of illustrating that kind of effect without having somebody click off and having an empty homepage. In fact, I believe they have a theme, here it is, that uses this. So as you can see, the slider's up top and they have the footer, the header right here, and then it enters the actual content body, and it looks great. You can add a header background image. You could choose modify pretty much everything about the header in terms of its styling, adding padding, whether it's full width or boxed, add a shadow. Keep in mind that shadow options do not work with Internet Explorer. The sticky header, you could choose how the sticky header works. You could choose to only have a sticky header for desktop. You could choose to add it for tablets, mobile, or all of them. You could choose to add a header animation. What the header animation does is it will essentially resize the header once it goes into this mode. So as you can see right now, it's the same size, but if you enable the animation effect, what it will do is it'll shrink it And that just allows you to reclaim some white space, some content space rather, but let's just see. They probably have some, there it goes. So as you can see, it shrunk just a little bit when it's scrolled down, and it just allows you to get more screen real estate while keeping the menu in focus. And you can obviously turn it back off if you don't need it. And you can choose to enable or disable the shadow. The shadow effect, as you can see, is right here. It's just that extra little line that makes it feel like it's got depth to it. You can modify the menu structure. Menus are quite important. You could choose to give the menu a specific height. So as it mentions here, though, that the logo is set to 78 pixels, but the menu height is set to 81. If you want them to be identical, you could set this to 78 as well. Or if you want the text to be larger than the logo, you could completely do so. You can modify every aspect of the design of your main menu, from the width, which is going to be the drop-down width of pages, as it mentions here. You can give them each item extra padding. You could choose to, on the main menu highlight style, to give it a color only, modify the top bar, background. You could choose to modify essentially every aspect of the theme. You could choose to turn on a search icon in the main menu, which is very important. If you are a blog active website, what this will do is it should just add it right over here to the end, right here, and it'll drop on click, and you can just type it in. What's great is, even though this demo did not come with this functionality out of the box, it added it and the styles work, and it looks like the exact same design as the rest of it. And you search, and it'll take you to a search page of random stuff that I just typed in. I don't even know what I typed in. Oh, DF, very original. You can modify the typography settings and the colors of the menu items just by clicking on the font family. You could choose to give it a backup font family, which is going to be a local font as a substitute in case the Google font can't be downloaded, which is typically when it's restricted in a country where Google fonts are not allowed. Or give it a fallback font, so that way if the font isn't downloaded, it'll swap to it. You can give it a font color, which is just going to be the text color that is in the menu. If you wanted to, you can make it one of your predefined colors, or you could just make it like yellow, anything within this color grade. You can also use RGB colors in addition to hex, just by pasting them in here. And it'll kind of give you a preview of what that text looks like right here. You can choose your menu style. You could choose whether you want it to be a flyout menu, and which is what you can control for your mobile menu. So in your mobile menu, we have it selected as flyouts, but if I choose modern, which is going to be when you click it and the menu just drops. So let's illustrate what this site looks like on mobile devices real quick. We're just going to use the inspect element tool, and we're going to swap it and give it a device as a Moto G4. We're going to scroll it into 100%. And this is the flyout menu. Off screen, looks good, takes up the whole page, but it doesn't feel like it's obnoxious when it does it. And you could scroll down. This is touch sensitive, so this illustrates it as if it's touch. You click it and it'll take you to the page, or you can close it. If you want to use the modern layout, we'll show you what this looks like. We'll reload it, and this will modify how the page looks like. We click over here, we click, and it gives you a nice drop down of all the items. Keep in mind, for complex menu structures, this is probably going to be better for you. And then classic, which is my least preferred option, but it'll look kind of old school. So you click here and then you click go to, and it definitely doesn't look modern. Modern is basically the new version of classic, but flyout, in my opinion, looks the best. And with any of these options, you could choose to modify the text, the color, you could choose to add padding, you can choose to modify the margin between the icons, and you could choose to even display the mobile search icon or field if you wanted to. If you have mega menus enabled, you can build mega menus. This particular demo does not have them, but mega menus allow you to add a whole level of extra flexibility. You could choose to design a menu essentially with a page and use that as your mega menu structure. I'm not that big of a fan for crazy mega menu designs, but you do get a lot of flexibility. In fact, I believe one site that does make good use of it is the Avada University demo. The Avada University demo allows you to, on hover, let's pull it up just to show you too, it will allow you to get a very full looking mega menu. So it's got an image over here. On the courses screen, it lists out the courses here in images, and you get a nice list over here. The events screen will list out primary events that may be coming up, and then you could choose to get more information. And it does allow you to get a lot of flexibility with your menus that you just don't get in a lot of other themes. The main menu icons, you could choose whether you wish to have an icon, first of all, when you're designing the main menu. And then you get to choose the position of the icons here to be top, right, bottom, or left. You could choose the icon size, color, and the main menu icon hover color. If you want to modify your logo, it can be easily done in the logo section. And you could change the logo under a variety of circumstances. If you're really lazy, a trick that you may not be aware of is if you just set the default logo, it'll automatically fill it in for the rest of the site. So you don't need to put in your logo all these other options. You can just change the logo that you want to appear. So it supports Retina logos, and it has a default logo here. This is the logo as the site appears on desktop right here. And then when you scroll down and we get into the sticky menu, this is the sticky header logo. And then on mobile, you can either use the same logo or change it to something else. This way, if you're on mobile in particular, you get the extra flexibility of choosing really if you want to use an icon or if you want to use your entire full logo with text. Under the favicon settings, you get to upload the 16 by 16 or 32 by 32. Upload the 32 by 32 icon. And then it has support for iPhone and iPad icons as well. This can be used in conjunction with the site icon settings under the appearance and customizer. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, there'll be a video on it in the future. The page title bar is a bar that can show on certain pages. You have to enable it for that specific page in the first place, but it's a bar that can display a variety of information such as a search bar, breadcrumbs, the name of the post, among other information. And it really is kind of, I'm personally not that big of a fan of it. I prefer just having a completely structured custom layout for the page like these products look like. But you can use this. I personally, when I've built with Avada, I just don't use the page title bar. Even though it defaults to this, all the pages I'm aware of have it disabled. It's not a very attractive, modern looking design, but it exists. The breadcrumbs, if you're unaware, are basically a little trail on websites that show, if you're on a post, for instance, and the post is under a category, it will list the home dash the category like aesthetic, and then it will list the post name. So that way you get a very easy way to travel back to the original page. An example that I can think of would be, let's see if this demo has it by chance. No. A hobby site of mine, I'll show you what breadcrumbs look like. If you open up a post, for instance, there you go. This is a breadcrumb trail right here. It goes home, how to. This is exactly the functionality. You could choose to enable it for mobile devices, enable it on a per post or per page basis. You can then choose the prefix if you wish to have a prefix that is right before the breadcrumb. You could choose to add a separator or modify the separator, include different text size, the color, the hover color, and a bunch of other options. The amount of options that you get are kind of crazy to a degree. Sliding bar is just a bar that hits at the top. It'll have a little drop down arrow. When you click it, you get access to a widget area. I'll show you what it looks like, but we're not going to style it because it would take too long. But at least for the sake of a video, it'll add a bar that once it's clicked, the content will sliding bar open on page load. Let's just do that too. But as you can see, it gets this little plus button. You click it and it drops down more content. This is a good thing to hide, good space to hide content. Let's say you have a coupon and you have an e-commerce store built on Avada. You could put information about the coupon up there, and you could even put in a sign up box right there to capture them as they submit their email in that box. And then you email them the coupon code. The footer, you get a default number of options, obviously. It will default to 4 columns in this specific demo, and you could choose to increase the number of columns, and it will add new widget areas. You can have a maximum of 6 or have a minimum of 1. The center widgets content, you could choose to center all the content of the widgets. You can choose to just disable footer widgets altogether. You can choose to give the footer a special effect, and it does a good job of describing them. It'll have a parallax loading effect, a parallax with a background image, which is what you saw in the videography demo, a sticky footer. The footer will always stick at the bottom of the page just above the fold. Don't do this on long pages. They mentioned that on long pages it will act like a normal footer, but I personally just not a fan of that option. Or you can do sticky footer with a parallax background image. Copyright bar, which is your copyright section. You can choose to center the content of it. That is just the little text section down here. Personally, I like having the icons on the far right-hand side, so I wouldn't center it. And you can modify the text right there. You can choose to give it a background image. You can modify all aspects of the styling once again. You can modify your sidebars. You can choose to modify the responsive order of sidebars. You can choose the amount of sidebars to load, whether it's 1, 2, or both on one side. You can modify if they're sticky. You could choose what sidebar will load by default on posts or pages. You could choose to do this for pretty much every aspect of your website, from portfolios to archives to pages to blog posts to your search page to your WooCommerce pages if you're an e-commerce based website. You can modify the background of your website to give it a nice background image. You can set this for a globally, or you can set it on a per post / page basis. Under typography, you can set a general setting, which is just going to be kind of like the default. You can modify these on a per text basis using the Avada Fusion builder. You can even upload custom fonts if you wish. Make sure you fill out all the ones that you have available to you if you are using a custom font. Under the blog settings, you can modify aspects of the blog. You can hide the title. You can change how the blog page is rendered, or you can just custom design one if you wish using the Fusion builder. You can modify what loads on your blog single post. You can choose to give it a navigation box. You can turn off various aspects of this post. I will show you what this looks like. When you go to the post, you can modify, say for instance, you don't want an author box or you want the author box, you can turn it on or off. This one has custom settings on the post that turns these features off. You can modify them on a per post or per page basis. The blog meta is exactly the same. You can choose what meta to hide or show. For instance, if you want to show post meta tags, you're able to do so. Most people tend to not show the tags if they're trying to give it a kind of a cleaner design. Portfolio, basically the exact same options with some extra customability for the archive page, but exactly the same as the blog. You can do the exact same kind of content for the portfolio single post, which is just the actual portfolio listing. If you're curious, we can go into the projects real quick. This is the portfolio archive. Looks good. You can then modify this specific project, which is the portfolio, and this is what it looks like, included in this demo. You can modify what content loads on here, or you can obviously customize it like they did with the Fusion builder. For social media, you could choose which icons to show throughout your website and include links to them. You can choose to modify the styling of these icons. You can choose to load share buttons on your post, and then you can choose which share icons get loaded or are not loading. You can then change various aspects from your slideshow. You can give it a slider, a lightbox effect. There's honestly so much functionality in this theme, down to the contact form. You can build a contact form with simple settings. This works in conjunction with contact form 7. This is specifically meant to work on the contact page template, so keep that in mind. You could choose to give your website a Google map. Quick tip is my recommendation. If you're trying to put a Google map on a page, just go to Google Maps, copy the embed code and do that. Don't use the JS API because you have to pay for it. Whereas the embed API, you don't have to worry about that. The search page, you can modify the way the search page will display content, and you can modify the search form individually, whether you want to include live search, for instance. You can modify privacy settings so that way you're GDPR compliant. You can also choose to load your Google fonts and Font Awesome fonts locally if you're trying to avoid, number one, GDPR issues, but also issues where Google fonts may be restricted, as we mentioned earlier. You can give a consent screen that will turn on to prevent embeds and scripts from loading until the user gives consent. You can really get into the GDPR compliance settings here to restrict basically everything. SoundCloud, Facebook, YouTube, Google Maps, everything can effectively be restricted. You can uncheck these as you may need to for your specific country and their own privacy laws. We're going to turn it off though, because there's a lot of them. You can choose to turn on the privacy bar, which is basically just this website uses cookies warning. Not all countries require this, so you can use it as you need to. The extra settings is basically just extra customization that they couldn't fit anywhere else. You could modify your related post section if you're using it here. You can modify form styling, your grid styling, your rollover image styling. Under the advanced section, you can paste your code for your tracking scripts. Make sure you try and paste them into the before the body section. Under the performance section, as I covered in the Avada optimization video, you gain a ton of options to optimize your website. I would recommend checking that out if you are using Avada. Under the WooCommerce settings, you get to modify the shop page as well as the individual aspects of the shop. For instance, having a WooCommerce My Account link automatically added to the main menu. You can also choose to modify your checkout page to only use a single page design instead of the normal WooCommerce design. I'll show you what this looks like. It actually looks really nice. This looks great from a functional point of view. And you can just proceed to checkout if you so wish and go through the checkout process that's standard to WooCommerce. You can modify facets of the WooCommerce styling as well. For instance, having vertical tabs instead of horizontal tabs on your products. You can add custom styling. You can modify everything of the Fusion Builder elements. You can modify all the default settings for the various Fusion Builder elements, including the generalized background settings for every element on default. This covers everything in the theme options within reason, except for the export and import button. But what we really want to know is, how does the Fusion Builder function? Every theme builder now basically tries to do his own thing. You have the tag div builder, you have Elementor, WP Bakery. There are so many options. This is actually one of the better ones. I've had better experiences personally trying to work with the Fusion Builder than I have had when trying to work with an equivalent of like WP Bakery. Primarily because, number one, it's very straightforward. And while there's a lot of icons, once you get used to what they mean, it's really straightforward. You get the nice item over here. This is the sidebar toggle. You get a library, which will open up all the elements, and you can import elements from other demos that you may not be using. So for instance, you could select a demo like Avada Adventure, and you could choose to import the home page from Avada Adventure. Or the barbershop, you could choose to import any one of these pages. That allows you to get a really big head start if you want to combine features from two different demos, and then you just have to go through and fix the colors that may get imported and swap out the images. You can get a history, which will allow you to roll back if you make a change and you don't like it or you broke something, and that's going to happen. Under preferences, you can modify how this looks for you. You could choose to show a droppable area while dragging, which is helpful when you're not sure where items will be dropped. And you could choose to add the sidebar panel overlay mode, which when this is enabled, as this will mention, you click this and it says, if the sidebar panel should act as an overlay, if enabled, the sidebar will overlay the preview content. Personally, I leave this off, but some users do prefer to have a larger sidebar area. You could choose to add a new element very easily or add a new post. You click here, you can add the post. You could just outright clear your entire layout if you don't like your design. You can get a preview of what the design looks like on devices, not only on a per device, but the orientation of the device. Comparable, Elementor does allow you to modify on a per device basis, but doesn't let you see the device at least to my knowledge, on a horizontal layout. I haven't personally gotten that. You can choose to click this preview option, which basically just allows you to see it without all the junk from the Avada Fusion Builder hovering over it. You could choose to have it marked as published or swap it back to a draft right away. If you want to modify an element, you have a couple of options. You could choose to right click and edit, and you can do this for any level of the item. So for instance, I'm modifying the container here. This is very similar to how Elementor works. You can modify the content here of this title. You could delete the content. You can modify various details about its design. You could choose whether to hide it or make it only visible to a very specific design, a large screen, a small screen, or a tablet screen. I do wish that you had the extra flexibility to do the horizontal. So if you have your phone in landscape mode instead of portrait, I do wish that flexibility was there. You can modify all the design elements per element that you're modifying. You have extra options for animations. There are quite a few animations: bounce, fade, flash, rubber band, shake, slide, zoom, and there are just more than you'll probably ever need to use. And you can modify this essentially for every element. Say you want to add an element right below it, you hover over the element you want to modify and you click add below. Or if you want to clone it, you can easily do so. Or if you want to save an element to use on a different page, let's say you added a large Google map, for instance, you want to embed that on your home page, but you also want to embed it on your contact page, you can just save the element. That way you don't have to re-add it or do the styling. You just paste it over there. Makes it very easy to set up and modify content. And you can just drag and drop something if you don't like it. Let's say I want this to be up here for some reason. It'll go right there. It's going to look really weird, but you can do that. You can essentially drag and drop every element into the position that you want it to. If you want to swap out an image, for instance, you just edit the image and you can swap it out with another one. You could just provide it a max width attribute, but you shouldn't need to. Most of the time, it'll just fit to the container. You can modify every aspect. If you want the image to be in a lightbox, so say you have a very large image, but it gets kind of crunched or cropped in the container that you're using it in, you can just include it in a lightbox. So on click, it'll be full screen. You can add the alt text for your images and link it somewhere if you wish. You can modify basically every single element within your page with minimal work. The one thing I'll suggest is don't left click on an attribute. So for instance, I'm over here and I right clicked on this image to edit, but then I just clicked in this text box and it'll let me start typing. Get into the habit of right clicking, because when you don't right click, you are going to make it harder on yourself when you want to modify something again. So try to just get it over, right click it and then edit the item and then change the text, just so that way you have the sidebar open in case you need to modify another aspect of it, or in case you have custom styling within there using custom CSS, which some users do. Sometimes users will add a span style tag in here. Some of the demos do it too when it's not really necessary. And you can just go through and modify everything. And I do mean everything. However, we're basically going to stop here, because if we keep going into every bit of flexibility that you have, there's a reason that these themes typically are sold with the idea of infinite options. You have an infinite flexibility, and there are thousands upon thousands of sites built with this theme. It's a good theme. It really is. It has a strong development team, and it has a lot of flexibility. The Fusion Builder works great. I'd put it up there with some of the best in the page builder market. It's kind of sad that it only works with this theme, but that's probably what makes it so good in the first place, is that it's restricted to only work with this theme. But we need to talk about whether you should use Avada for your website. And that answer comes down to your priorities. If you're trying to build a website that is the leanest and it is super quick and very basic, no, you most certainly should not use this theme. As it currently stands, even a well-optimized Avada site will probably get into the 60s, maybe, on page speed insights on a good day. And that's because the theme is quite large. It loads a lot of JavaScript, and the developers have some work to do in terms of loading assets conditionally. but it's not really slow either. You can get an Avada site to have a fully loaded time of 2 seconds relatively easily with some optimization and not many third-party assets. That's not really that big of a challenge. It depends on how you're organizing your metrics, though. If you're somebody who's just starting a website and you can't afford to hire a developer and you just want to get something good, check the demos. The most important thing with these Themeforest themes, number one, other than the sales figures and the development team, is the demos. Because if you're not a designer, you're going to be using somebody else's design as your foundation. So it's important that before you buy Avada, you look at the design. You look at all the demos. You say, can I imagine my site looking like this? And if you can, then all you need to do is modify the text. Go through, learn the Fusion Builder and the options. And then you can get the design that will suit your website. If it doesn't look like it though, and you're not a designer, you will struggle. These themes are not for the faint of heart. If you are not a designer and the demos don't look like what you want, you can make it look like your website, but it's going to take quite a bit of time and you're going to have to learn, and you're probably going to have to use some custom CSS. And even though the Fusion Builder is great, and so would like Elementor be great, the tools are, when you're starting from scratch, the tools are only as strong as your design sense in this case. And Avada has a lot of great themes, and your demos are probably what are going to be your foundation. But if you're trying to design a site from scratch, I would probably not use this theme. But if you have a nice demo and you just want to and you want to just tweak it, great option. Great development team, great community. One of the great things about this, there's a Facebook group of Avada users. You go over there, you sign up. I'm in the group too. And they will answer any questions. I'll even include a link in the description to go check the group out. They're very active and very helpful. But if you have any questions about Avada in specific, because I didn't cover everything, there just wasn't enough time, please feel free to ask in the comments below, and I will try to answer that question. But check out the Avada users group too. They're very helpful over there, and they can probably help you decide if this is what you want to use for your next project. Great theme. I would highly recommend it. It's just not the fastest on the market. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.